morning. I'm Ricky Wilson, a professional wetland scientist with HDR. Jared Bechtol with Oklahoma DOT was integral in this process, but isn't able to be here this morning, so I'll be giving the presentation. So just to give you a little bit of background, Oklahoma sits in the middle of the United States, and Oklahoma Department of Transportation manages a program for roadway improvements, including replacing structurally deficient bridges and adding shoulders for safe transportation. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is a federal regulatory agency that oversees permitting for impacts to aquatic ecosystems. So when we have a project that impacts streams, wetlands, or other waters of the United States, the Corps of Engineers is involved, and oftentimes we have to do mitigation to offset the lost functions from those impacts. So collaboration is a really important process as we're going through our projects. We try to meet early and often with a multidisciplinary team of ODOT engineers, ODOT scientists, consultant engineers that may be designing the project, as well as consultant scientists, and the federal agency, the Corps of Engineers I mentioned, as well as some state agencies often. And so really what we want to do is come in early as we can and find creative solutions. So an example on the top two figures, you see a roadway where originally, like engineers do, they wanted to make the road straight. But when we saw this, we realized that there's a pretty sensitive stream feature that they were going to fill right over. And so when we met with the Corps of Engineers and explained to the designers that, hey, this is going to be a long process, it's going to be very costly to try to replace that resource, they kind of saw the light, and we were able to work with them to create a slightly less curved roadway, but that really minimized the impacts to the aquatic resource. So that's kind of a minimization strategy that we use there. Similarly, that bottom graphic shows they had a structurally deficient bridge, but they needed to keep the roadway open during construction. Their original idea was, well, let's just realign the road off to the south and put the new bridge in. We can keep the existing road open during construction. Well, there's a bunch of wetlands where they were going to permanently impact there. So instead, we worked with them, said, okay, well, what if you replace the bridge on alignment and just do a temporary detour to keep the road open during construction? That way we can go back and restore the wetlands later. And again, we were able to get agreement on that and work through that process, and also made the collaboration with the Corps of Engineers more streamlined as well, because they saw that minimization. So when we're looking for wetland mitigation, we really look across the landscape and try to find opportunities within a project area or adjacent to the project area, to create kind of in-kind sustainable ecosystems that we see on the landscape and replicate nature. I like to say, think like a beaver, right? Get the elevations right and find your hydrology. So the top photo shows a large wetland and stream complex that was just upstream of a bridge that needed to be replaced and had some permanent wetland impacts. But we worked with ODOT and their real estate department to go ahead and purchase additional right-of-way during the process so that they could protect and enhance those wetlands as an offset for what they were impacting during the project. Similarly, on those bottom photos, we had a roadway that needed to go through some wetlands to be realigned for some safety of the roadway. And so we looked at the wetlands that were already there, and again, found the opportunity to kind of replicate what was there by creating some new wetlands adjacent to those areas. So I just wanted to talk through a couple of the solutions that we've been able to use on other projects. We've been able to go in, and when there are unavoidable wetland impacts, actually harvest that topsoil that has that seed bank of those wetland plants and use that to restore and create wetlands later. And so a lot of times this looks like working with contractors, working with designers to try to come up with plans to harvest that seed bank. Make sure you know where the contractor stockpiles it so they don't lose it, because you're going to go ahead and place that in new wetlands later. And so you can kind of see some examples there of a wetland we might have harvested the soil from because it was going to be impacted. And then the bottom right photo, a recent placement of that topsoil. And then later on to the left, the wetland plants coming back. Another opportunity where we had to work with our engineers is, they want to move water away from the road as quickly as possible. But we said, well, why don't we take some of those roadside ditches and develop wetlands using some low berms? So put some low berms in the ditches to try to catch the runoff and then promote infiltration, sediment capture, and nutrient cycling, and develop that wetland habitat. And then work with the maintenance crews and say, okay, we're going to fence these areas off so you don't have to mow through them and take out that habitat every year or two. And so kind of come up with that. And you can kind of see those examples on the right side where we had several wetlands develop along a US highway after a bridge replacement project. So it really comes down to planning and implementation. And again, this is a very collaborative process with engineers, a construction contractor. We try to put as much detail as we can into plans and details and notes that the contractor is going to receive from an engineer so that they know what they're supposed to be doing. But then we also have to meet with them right before construction starts, during the construction process, and towards the end to make sure everything is coming out the way that we anticipated. And so you can kind of see an example there of some plans that we developed and the resulting wetland restoration on the top right. And then an example on the bottom, which was a little bit of a learning process where we thought it was going to work one way. The contractor built it on that lower left photo, and we had to go out and make some field adjustments to get the hydrology and the wetland habitat the way we wanted it. So in summary, here's another project example, State Highway 32. This was a road realignment. So they had to move the road a little bit to get the bridge replacement where it needed to go on the large stream channel. And so they were going to have some unavoidable wetland impacts. And so again, it was a collaboration between the engineers and the scientists to develop these plans for some roadside wetland mitigation. We actually took the right-of-way or the property that was between the old alignment and the new alignment. There were still some wetlands there. And then we basically mimicked that hydrology by excavating to get that depth of those wetlands and then putting some of the wetland topsoil back where it would be generating those wetland plants again. And again, working with the contractor throughout the construction process so that we could make sure it ended up the way we wanted it. And you can kind of see those photos there on the right. So appreciate your time, and yeah, open to questions.
So I was curious how long you stored the soil, and if you found any risk to biological seeds or if they got too beat up. And in addition, did you look at the fungi at all and see what type of still live left in the next one?
Good. So the question was, do we look at the soil excavation depth and the risks of anything in the soil, and well as the fungi? And so we didn't really look at the fungi, but we did, consider that, you may have some invasive species in your soil seed bank, but that when you look at the wetland that's being impacted, evaluate, is it more natives or more invasive species, to try to figure out if that's what you really want. We were just excavating about 12 inches down, just kind of a standard depth, because we knew that was about what we wanted to place into the new wetland area. Storage, yes. So the other part of the question was storage. So yes, it was, we had to have a designated location, and then we covered it with like core fabric to try to preserve that soil. But yeah, there was a consideration for not wanting the seeds to germinate unexpectedly or to get too hot. So it was trying to stockpile it in a location and with some covering so that it wouldn't, we wouldn't lose those seeds. So it's been successful. So, we're trying to keep, and we have actually, I'll tag on to that. The contractors realize that storing that wetland topsoil for too long is going to be detrimental. So as much as we can, it's kind of an excavate in place. And it just kind of depends on the project and the mitigation sequence if we're able to do it, within a month or within several months, but we try to get it placed as quickly as possible.